What is going on, YouTube people? Your Heads of Comics here. Today, we are going to take a little walk down memory lane and talk about what the hell happened to Beckett. The fall of Beckett, the once hobby darling grading company competing right there with PSA prior to the early 2020s, even outpacing PSA in some regards. The pandemic happened, decisions were made, decisions were not made, and then things just all kind of went sideways, and we are where we presently sit today. Today, in early 2024, PSA is the king of resale value, which makes them the king of submissions. They get the most by a mile. Their cards sell for the most. They have built a war chest. They are the Death Star. Their parent company, Collectors Universe, just purchased their number 2 competitor, SGC, just a few weeks ago to knock them off the board, leaving Beckett even further behind along with CGC. Even CGC, the new kid on the block since the pandemic craziness, has blown past Beckett in regards to TCG Sports, not so much. Where we sit today, Beckett is basically a niche grading company. They are used for 90s and early 2000s stuff, RPAs, and thicker cards. They don't even have the edge in Bowman anymore. They used to be the go-to for first Bowman autos. SGC stole that business from them with their aggressive pricing specials over the last few years. And PSA's dominance on the resale side, the amount of Bowman getting submitted to Beckett has drastically dropped off. Now, they still get some high-end cards. They are much more of a niche grading company, as I discussed before. Higher-end stuff, patch cards, 90s, 2000s. They're kind of stuck in a time, if you will. But how did we get to this point? How did we go from people cracking out PSA 10s to try to get True Gem Plus or True Gem BGS 9.5 to today when they're not even really considered outside those few things that we talked about? And let's use a little example here. This is the Luca Silver Prism. I thought this really kind of showed, how things have changed over the years when you look at this card in particular. Let's go back to early 2020. This is pre-pandemic. Sports cards, and I think people forget about this. Sports cards were getting very popular late 2019 into early 2020. A lot of prices were really exploding for the time. Now they look like they hardly moved at all. But for the time, prices were moving up. There was a lot of talk, and a lot of that was being driven by Luca. But cards were kind of already beginning to get popular again. Now, no one knew then what would actually happen because of the pandemic, but still, cards were already on the way up. So this is January 5th, 2020. The craziness has not happened yet, but things are growing. A PSA 10 Silver Prism Luca is going for about 1.3K to 1.4K. Actually, not that far off of what it sells for today. Today, they're going for about 1.1, 1.2, just kind of depends on the day. A PSA 9 was selling for $530. So almost a 3x difference there, about 2.5x. A Beckett BGS 9.5 was going for just over $1,000. So double a PSA 9. And, PSA 10 was definitely getting a premium, but nowhere near what it got today. Now, obviously, the pandemic comes around. Lots of craziness happens, and we're going to take a little quick walk down memory lane here shortly. Let's fast forward to today. What do they sell for? A PSA 10 going for about let's just call it 1.1K. A BGS 9.5, just under $700. So not quite half, but close. And then the real not shocker, but the real eye-opening thing here is the premium over a PSA 9 has really dropped. The PSA 9 currently going for about $425, with the BGS 9.5 going for about $670. Only a few $100 difference there. In the past, it was almost double that. Now, that gap has narrowed. So you have two things that have happened here. The PSA 10 gap widened, and the PSA 9 to BGS 9.5 gap narrowed. Not great. And when you also consider Beckett is, in some cases, more expensive to submit with. Their base level service for a non-economy order is like $40 a card. Now, economy you can get for $18 a card, I think, currently with subgrades. And then it just depends on what the current PSA pricing is with declared values and all that stuff. How did we get to this point? How did this happen? And it really boils down to one, not necessarily, let's call it three kind of key things. The number one thing is a masterclass in how not to communicate with your customer base. People were begging for updates from Beckett during the pandemic, and they chose the path of, we're not going to say a word. We're not going to do anything. And remember, this was a time when PSA was closing down services. Beckett had to slow down services as well for a while there. But Beckett's communication during the dark times was terrible. They did not keep us updated into what was going on with turnaround times, what they were doing to try to improve things. Just radio silence. And I think that pissed a lot of people off. On top of that, the money they did invest back in the company, and once again, we'll kind of take a walk down memory lane on some of this stuff. Instead of improving turnaround times, hiring graders, improving customer service, improving the submission process, they went out and chased a bunch of other nonsense. So they spent their capital in the wrong places, in my opinion. Now, it's easy to say in hindsight, but even at the time, people were questioning, what are you guys doing? Why are you going in this direction when your core business needs the love? You don't need to go out and buy a collectible tracking service. You need to spend a couple $1,000,000 getting your customer service and your turnaround times better. And then the other thing that happened was they had a grading scale problem, which they tried to correct. That kind of blew up in their face, and they waited too late in the game to do it. The BGS 9.5 as a primary grade, as the new money and new people came in, they just wanted 10s. They wanted 10 as the primary grade. They did not want to see a 9.5 as the main grade. And yes, Beckett has a pristine 10. It is very hard to get. Yes, it sells for a premium, but that is not their gem mint grade. 9.5 is their gem mint grade. When your primary grade is not a 10, it negatively impacts you. And, as a content creator, the amount of time I had to spend in comments over the almost 4 years life of this channel explaining that a PSA 10, an SGC 10, a CGC 10, and a BGS 9.5 were all the same thing, that all those grades meant gem mint, would astound you. And then you get into the nuances of the Beckett subgrades. Is it a min gem? Is it a true gem? Is it a true gem plus? Is it a min gem plus plus? Is it a true gem plus? All that nonsense built into it as well. People want simplicity. And they attempted to make some changes there, but that ultimately blew up in their face as well. Let's take a quick walk down grading memory lane. This was actually fun to go back and pull these up. And it's kind of nice that I have all the videos out there that I could go back and look at the dates on, when a lot of this nonsense happened. We're talking a little PSA to kick things off. Remember, October 1st, 2020, PSA suspends economy orders. This is when things started going sideways. The grading companies were getting absolutely blitzed. Some companies kept taking cards in. PSA slowed things down a little bit. Now, As time went on, we quickly realized they didn't pump the brakes enough. Fast forward to March 30th, 2021. One of the wilder stories that, I've done videos on over the years. PSA shuts down everything except for Super Express. This was actually right when Nat Turner took over in his group. If you remember, March 1st of 2021, they tried to slow things down even more and put a massive price increase into place. Rumors of that got out. It was the worst kept secret in the hobby that it was coming, and they got absolutely blitzed at the end of February of 2021. People were trying to get every card into the door that they could before the huge price increases went into effect. Those price increases went into effect. They got decimated by everyone trying to beat that deadline. That is when the post office at the local post office had to basically shut down because they got so many packages in for PSA over that couple day period. And then that led to them having to make the tough decision of actually shutting down all orders. So imagine you're Beckett. Your number one competitor, the number one player in the space, said, we're done. We're not taking cards anymore. And you could not capitalize on that. They did not position themselves correctly because they had their own set of problems. On the flip side of this, you have SGC digging through their backlog, and they were able to take advantage of this a little bit back in the day. Let's fast forward a little bit in time. Remember this one? This is July 2022, Atlantic City National. I remember driving to the AC National on Wednesday, setup day. I was staying in Philadelphia the night before and then driving into the show early Thursday morning. This leaks on social. People saw the booth and this air quote new slab design that was coming out. I remember getting to the hotel room and thinking, what in the hell is going on over there in Atlantic City? At this point in time, I had a relationship with Beckett. I knew some people there. I made a couple phone calls. They told me this was not a new slab design. This was the marketing team just putting up some stuff and basically going rogue, essentially. Now, you could choose to believe that or not. Some people do, some people don't. Regardless, people thought that it was a new slab design, and this blew up in their face. People were like, wait, what? This thing's hideous. What are you doing? What's this black background? People just lost their mind that this was their slab redesign. Why is there no inner sleeve? All this craziness. That was the first of, let's just call it bad PR blunders that they could just not get out of their way. Fast forward a couple months later, September 8th, PSA, their backlog is basically clear and bulk is back. So PSA has now said the doors are essentially wide open again. Send us your cards. Meanwhile, Beckett had reopened their full services by this point, but they were still moving extremely slow. Even to this day, there is still a lot of people complaining about Beckett's overall turnaround times. That they are not the best for standard orders. Here's a fun one. And this is the chef's kiss of everything. March 31st, 2023. Basically 1 year ago. This feels a lot longer than 1 year ago. At the Mint Collective, this leaks out. Once again, someone got wind of this prior to it actually happening because some things were posted in the booth. I believe is how all that went down, and this got out that a new grading scale was coming. They were trying to get to a Gem Mint 10 grade. The problem is this thing was an absolute mess. And then when you dug into the numbers on this, and I forget the specifics now, I didn't fully re-listen to this video, but taking everything that was a true gem and turning it into a Mint 9.5, a Mint Plus 9.5, was one of the craziest decisions they almost made. Now, this ended up not happening, but I remember when this went down, pinging GemRate and asking him for the data, and I think it was like 70%. I don't remember if it was in this video or not that I covered it. Yep, there it is. So basically, they were going to take 85% of all their Gem Mint graded 9.5s and say, those aren't 9.5s, those aren't Gem Mint cards anymore. People were so mad about this. They had to blow this up and go back to the drawing board not more than a day later, April 1st, 2023, a day and a half, 2 days later. Pause. We're taking a timeout. We need a minute here. We'll keep you updated. A week later, April 7th, they say we're putting the whole thing on hold and we are going to meet with collectors and gather feedback. This is April 7th, 2023. Now, I could say that they did do this. I was part of the process of the collectors that they met with. But they still have yet to say anything publicly about this since then. They never came out and said, we are no longer considering it. We are still considering it. This, that, whatever. It has still been radio silence from Beckett since April 7th, 2023 regarding this change. Now, obviously, at this point, you would assume they just decided to stay status quo. But wouldn't you think it would be smart to come out and say, like, hey, we're going to give you guys some clarity. We are doing this. We're not doing this. This is what we're doing. We're not changing anything, or we're still looking at it, or whatever. They have not made any statement regarding this situation since April 7th of 2023. And that takes us to where we currently sit today, because basically they really haven't done anything crazy. They got rid of their COO or CEO and brought in the guy from Southern Hobby to take things over. In hindsight, I do believe not making an adjustment to the grading scale change was ultimately a problem. You had shaken that hornet's nest up. I think that was your opportunity to do something. Now, the one that they initially rolled out that everyone got super fired up about, I do not believe was the correct decision to make. I think there was a version of it that was better than that. But here we now sit today. The other problem, we kind of hinted about this earlier, they went in too many different directions when they should have focused on their core things, which was card grading. The other major missed opportunity. How is it you are Beckett? You are known for the Beckett price guide that we all grew up with, that we loved. How in the hell did you let market movers and card ladder dominate the space of an online pricing guide? They basically came in, modernized what you were doing, and took your guys' lunch. They spent a ton of money chasing a bunch of other craziness. They would have been way better off early on to just buy out market movers or card ladder and integrate them in, or better yet, come up with the idea before they did and integrate it. The fact that Beckett's online pricing guide is basically non-existent, that they did not figure out the collection management / price online pricing checking comps thing better than market movers, card ladder, and even alt. Alt's app for checking comps is fantastic. The fact that those three companies came out of nowhere when this was your literal bread and butter is another just massive miss out of them. Let's look at some of the things that they did that still leave me scratching today. Remember the Beckett Vault? Beckett launches new vault for storing sports cards and collectibles. This was August 25th, 2022. I can't tell you the last time I heard anyone talk about the Beckett vault since it was launched. I, I, I honestly don't know a single person that uses it. I don't even know if this still exists. I honestly don't. I kind of poked around their website for a couple minutes and I didn't really see much about it. That is a large sum of money that could have went to fixing court issues. Knox, acquisitions of Knox. This was a collection management like tool that was supposed to launch Beckett Collect, which, to the best of my knowledge, I still don't think is really live at this point. That was another big miss. And once again, these individual companies could have been fine on their own. It's just Beckett had other problems that they could have spent their money on to fix and improve things. Do Dilly. This is now, this one we don't really know how much they're using or not. This is a pre-grading scanning technology, basically. I don't know how much this has been incorporated into their business or not. Maybe they use this all the time. I have no idea. Just given their track record, I doubt it. And then the final one, Interest Global, which is Beckett's parent company, went out and acquired Southern Hobby. So this was a play to get into the distribution market. Southern Hobby, one of the biggest distributors, when at the same time that Fanatics is coming into the space and basically saying, hey guys, we're going to take everything over. Distribution, your game is going to change and you are probably not going to exist. So, what do you all think? Where did things at Beckett go sideways? Was it the lack of communication? When they did communicate, it was done extremely poorly with things leaking out and lack of clarity. Was it spending money in the wrong places? Was it not adjusting the grading scale at all, or in some cases sooner rather than later? Where did it all fall apart to where they get to this point now where they are outside of, like I said before, those couple niche marketplaces for grading cards for what they're considered at? You know, that's what they're used for, is they're a niche grader at this point in time. They've gotten blown away by PSA, passed up by SGC, and in some cases CGC has passed them up. Now, resale value on sports cards, not so much, but TCG, they're crushing them in the submissions game. And resale value on CGC stuff is pretty good on the TCG side of things. Crazy times. Fun little walk down memory lane there. As always, curious for your thoughts and comments down below. Catch you boys and girls on the next one. Peace.